Last week, the world lost the extraordinary, iconic, and universally respected legend of a woman, Dr. Jane Goodall, a pioneering conservationist, animal advocate, educator, scientist, storyteller, and one of the most compassionate environmental activists in the world. She passed away peacefully at the age of 91 while on a speaking tour in Los Angeles, California, a testament to her dedication in that she literally was working right to the end of her life. And I don't know about you, but my social media feed has been absolutely full of heartfelt tributes from around the world, from celebrities, artists, religious leaders, and people from all walks of life. In such a divided world, it's heartwarming to see how loved Jane Goodall was across the board, the enduring effect she had on people, and the movements she inspired and cultivated. Perhaps most well known as a primatologist, that is, a scientist who studies the biology and behavior of non-human primates, she rose to fame for her observations and long-running study of chimpanzees in Tanzania in the 1960s, in which she became the first scientist to observe that chimpanzees made and used tools, challenging the belief that only humans could do so. She noticed their complex social relationships, their capacity for cooperation and aggression, and their tenderness towards their infants. Jane Goodall's life proved that one person really can change the way humanity sees itself and its place in nature. What we learn from her is so much more than just the behavior of chimpanzees. She opened our eyes to the profound connections between all living beings and the moral responsibility we hold for our planet. I didn't personally know Jane Goodall and I never met her, but I've been genuinely inspired by her insights and wisdom. I was lucky enough to hear her speak a couple of years back at an intimate talk she gave at a university near my work, alongside her trusty Mr. H, the stuffed plush monkey that accompanied her in her seemingly non-stop travels around the world. She was a gifted speaker, weaving stories and reflections into an extremely compelling call to action to address current threats to the planet like climate change, deforestation, and biodiversity loss. She had the audience utterly spellbound, completely engaged and hanging on her every word. She radiated warmth, and her gentle calmness belied a fierce and uncompromising intellect. It truly felt like a privilege and honor being in her presence. Jane Goodall was born in London, England in 1934, and even as a child was curious about animals. She loved reading, watching her dogs, and fell in love with the story of Tarzan. She often spoke about the invaluable support of her mother in fostering her passions, speaking to the incomparable value of having strong, supportive mothers who instill the belief in their daughters that they can do anything they put their minds to. So passionate about wildlife as she was that in 1960, at just 26, she traveled from England to Tanzania in Africa by boat to study chimpanzees in the Gombe National Park. Without a degree, a lab, or equipment, just a pair of binoculars and a notebook, and the courage, passion, and determination to observe these primates in what was then a completely male-dominated field. In what would become the longest running study of chimpanzees, she didn't just observe behaviors, but also personalities. And she defied scientific convention of the time by giving the chimpanzees names and described their relationships, emotions, and individual characters. Other researchers would actually criticize this as unscientific, arguing that animals should be treated as identical data points. But Goodall's mentor, Lieu would recognize the groundbreaking value of her perspectives and later pushed for her to be admitted directly into a PhD program at Cambridge University, becoming one of the first people ever to do so without actually having a bachelor's or master's degree. But her observations would go on to reshape science and our understanding of our closest animal relatives. Goodall's research proved that chimpanzees make tools, form families, grieve, and display emotions, which, as you can imagine, challenged the very boundary between human and animal. But Goodall went far beyond documenting behavior as a scientist. She became an educator and storyteller, bridging the gap between science and the general public. Through her books, lectures, and advocacy, she connected with audiences of all generations, and most importantly, she made people care. She would emphasize, only if we understand can we care. Only if we care, we will help. Only if we help, we shall be saved. For her, understanding nature was never enough. It had to lead to action. She recognized early on that the biggest threat to the planet was not just deforestation or climate change, but indifference. The human tendency to look away, to believe someone else will solve the problem. She wasn't an idealist. She recognized the threats to the planet and humanity, but through all the destruction of nature and violence, she was a pragmatist. Her work was about waking people up and inspiring people to take action, famously saying, "The greatest danger to our future is apathy," showing us that change is only possible when we act with empathy, courage, and persistence. One of the most important lessons we can learn from Jane Goodall is that protecting our natural environment is a non-negotiable. It is in fact essential for our collective survival. Her decades of work shows us that the well-being of humans, animals, and our environment are inseparable. She warned us that destroying forests for short-term gain means erasing the future for generations to come. She emphasized that every species plays a role in the web of life, and the loss of biodiversity threatens the stability of ecosystems we all depend on. Her message resonates even more today as climate change intensifies. Goodall reminds us that conservation isn't just about saving animals, but about preserving the very systems that make life on Earth possible. She connected environmental issues to a sense of justice, pointing out that the poorest communities often suffer the most from environmental destruction. She believed in local action, and her Roots and Shoots program, launched in 1991, has empowered young people in more than 100 countries to lead projects that protect the environment, support communities, and advocate for animals. Her straightforward philosophy was to start with small steps, inspire others, and watch change grow, famously saying, "What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make." She consistently reiterated that every action matters, whether planting a tree, reducing waste, or advocating for stronger environmental policies. Goodall was crystal clear that waiting for governments or corporations to act is simply not enough. Change begins with every single one of us. Of particular significance for me was her belief that protecting the environment requires changing the way we eat. For 50 years, she spoke about the link between factory farming, animal suffering, and ecological destruction. She pointed out that the meat industry drives deforestation, contributes massively to greenhouse gas emissions, and wastes water and land resources. She encouraged people to adopt plant-based diets not only for the planet, but also for compassion towards animals. For her, it was a moral choice as well as a practical one. The idea that a plant-based diet enables us to nourish ourselves without causing pain or suffering to animals, and is also one of the most powerful ways to reduce our carbon footprint. In her words, We have the choice to use the gift of our life to make the world a better place, or not to bother. Choosing what we eat each day is a choice about what kind of world we want to create. Because at the heart of Jane Goodall's philosophy was compassion. She believed that empathy was not just a human trait, but something that linked us to animals and nature. Her intimate observations of chimpanzees revealed their joy, grief, and love. By showing the world these emotions in animals, she expanded the moral circle of care beyond our species. She would frequently say, "The least I can do is speak out for those who cannot speak for themselves." And this principle guided her activism for animal welfare, her fight against poaching, and her opposition to cruel practices in research laboratories and factory farms. But her compassion was not limited to just animals. She extended it to people, recognizing that conservation has to go hand in hand with human development. At Gombe National Park, she saw how poverty forced local communities to cut down forests for survival. But instead of blaming them, she worked with them, launching programs that provided education, healthcare, and sustainable livelihoods. By addressing these human needs, she helped protect the forests and wildlife. What made Jane Goodall such an enduring figure was her ability to inspire hope, even in dark times. She saw firsthand the devastation of ecosystems, the suffering of animals, and the greed of corporations, yet she refused to give in to despair. Her response to hopelessness was action. She reminded us constantly that every person can make a difference, no matter how small. She believed that when people feel powerless, they disengage, but when they realize their actions matter, they become agents of change. And her vision of hope was never just passive wishful thinking. It was built on the resilience of nature, which can recover if given a chance, and grounded in the conviction that humans are capable of great compassion when they choose to act. Though Jane Goodall has passed away, her voice will continue to be heard for generations to come. Her books, films, and her Jane Goodall Institute will carry forward her vision. Millions of people have been inspired by her life and will honor her legacy and continue her work. Her life is a reminder that greatness doesn't come from wealth, power, or titles. It comes from courage, persistence, and love. She embodied the idea that science, empathy, and spirituality don't have to be thought of separately, but rather are intrinsically interlinked and must work together to create a just, compassionate, and sustainable world. She showed us the faces of chimpanzees, and through them, ourselves. She reminded us that humans are not the landlords of this planet, but an integral and equal part of the vast unified tapestry of life. And she left us with a responsibility to protect ourselves, our non-human relatives, and our planet. Now, I certainly cannot do justice to her legacy in one short video, so I'd highly recommend you check out her interview in Netflix's Last Famous Words, especially her final posthumous message to humanity at the end of the program. But be warned, you might need a tissue. In my humble opinion, it's no overestimation to say that Jane Goodall was an angel who walked this earth, and her light will continue to shine in the work of those who follow in her footsteps, and her story will continue to inspire and guide us all toward a more compassionate and sustainable world. Rest in peace, Dr. Jane Goodall.